So tonight, I am honored and blessed to be here with you and Teresa Carson and Kat Doty, who are celebrating her collection that is due out next month in early February. Wonderama, the most highly anticipated collection that we've had in a long while. Kat, it's been a long time coming. I know people have been asking you for a book for a very long time. I'm so glad you're able to give them that gift now. And I'm quite excited. So this is the rundown of the evening. I'm going to come in as the interim host, but it's going to be the Teresa Carson and Kat Doty show. I'm going to introduce Teresa. She's going to read for about 15 minutes. Afterwards, I'll introduce Kat, and she'll read for another 15 to 20 minutes. Afterwards, we will be opening it up to questions. If you have any questions for the Q&A portion, you can drop that in the chat box down below. Also, what I really like about these readings is the communication with the audience throughout the night. So if you hear any beautiful lines, anything that touches your heart, touches your soul, please put that down in the chat box, because when the author is done reading and they're looking through the chat, they'll be able to receive all those positive vibrations. Great. Okay, good. So, and of course, just try to keep yourself on mute throughout the whole performance, just to make sure that we're showing respect to our two lovely authors that both have amazing collections in their pocket, and they're just great literary advocates. And I'm so happy that I've been able to meet them. So without further ado, Teresa Carson holds an MFA in poetry and an MFA in theater, both from Sarah Lawrence College. She is the author of 4 collections of poetry: Elegy for a Floater, CavanKerry Press 2008, and My Crooked House, CavanKerry Press 2014. Both of those books, which are available for a 20% discount for this reading. Gabe will put that in the chat box as well. And then Crooked House was a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize. There's also the Congress of Human Oddities, Deerbrook Editions 2015, and Visit to an Extinct City, Deerbrook Editions 2021. And we might hear some work from that tonight as well. She lives in Florida, where she co-curates 2 programs aimed at fostering cross-disciplinary collaborations and putting art into public settings: the Unbroken Threads Project and Art in Common Places, which are both great projects. And I encourage you to ask questions, or Teresa, when you get a second, maybe during the Q&A, if you could put links to those things, that'd be great for people to see your work. And she frequently contributes her ideas about poetry on her CavanKerry Press blog in a weekly poetry blast called La Poesía de la Semana. Without further ado, I'm introducing you to Teresa Carson. Clap it up.
Well, first of all, thank you, Joan, who is not here, I know, but Gabe and Dimitri for giving me this opportunity to read with Kat Doty, who is not only one of my favorite poets in the world, but one of my favorite people in the world. And for some reason, we've never read together before tonight. So this is a really special reading for me. I'll be reading 7 poems, and I'll start with one from Jack Weiler's 2006 collection, Fun Being Me, because Jack introduced Kat and me. He knew both of us, and he kept telling me that both of us would get along, and he was absolutely right. So I wanted to have his presence in the room tonight. Belief systems. I don't believe in God, but I believe in you. I believe the world spins, and that if you step on a crack, you break your mother's back. I believe I broke my mother's heart when I left my wife, and that there was a crack in the world that I fell in when my mother died. I believe if you find a penny and pick it up, that all the day you'll have good luck. I believe that this is a sad, sad world, that men pushing shopping carts loaded up with 7-Up cans is not good, that I have been a cruel and selfish fool, and that if God could see, if he could reach out, he would touch me. And I believe the touch of God is the rough heave of waves on 1,000 storm-tossed seas. I believe the gold spire of New York life is wrapped in dense fall clouds. That taxis come and go, and try as I might, I can't make them stop for me. This world of loss, of cracks stepped on so often, the Mother of God can't stop weeping. I believe I've stepped on a crack. I believe I'm wrong too often, and I believe I've got a long walk home from here. I believe that I believe in too little, too late, and that somewhere in New York City, you can walk on a street that's lit just a little by that light from that huge golden spire. I believe that's you walking down that street. I believe that I'm lost and it's dark. Whew. Okay, Jack's in the room. So I'll be reading 6 poems and starting with 2 from Elegy for the Floater. The Barking Boy. The barking boy lurches across the rain-slick street. No umbrella. Snorts as he slaps his cheeks. I cross to avoid him. Sticks his hands in gutter water, picks out a crushed cup, throws it like a girl, and lets loose with a louder bark when it falls short of his target. A boy near his age, cycling away from us. The barking boy sees me. I dip my umbrella so I can't see him. Retards, we called kids like him in the 60s. Oversized, dumb Walter was one. I hated him when Sister Grace's class saw him give me a chocolate heart. And greasy Alice wearing Goodwill clothes, and Mary Ann chewing her arm instead of giving the knee-jerk yes when Sister Malachi grilled us one by one. Do you believe in God? Freaks, rejects, barkers all. The barking boy kicks off a shoe. It thunks the door of a passing car. The barking boy will become the man who marches down Broad Street screaming, I don't want to, over and over, who runs into La Bella Deli at lunch, cursing in every direction, who, as my brother Joseph did, carries dog shit in his pockets, walks backwards through his mother's rooms, wears a flannel shirt and shoes with holes the July night when he wraps chains and cement blocks around his chest and jumps off the Turnpike Bridge. Someday, the barking boy's sister will sit in a police station across the desk from Detective Nankivell, who will hand her an autopsy report and 3 Polaroids of human remains, which she won't look at because she wants to appear reasonable, to make sure this detective, everyone in the station, in Kearney, in the world, knows she is not a barker. The first signs of spring. Because it was April, the tulip buds cracked, then revealed satin-sheened blood-red petals. And the blossoming pear trees on 9th Street filled the air with bridal stillness. The perfect setting for the song of an unseen bird. Then the woman in front of Balducci screamed, Adam, give me your fucking hand. At the small boy with the dropped head, his fists clutching his jacket. I knocked her down, picked up the boy, and fled up 6th Avenue. We stopped to get Toby, the ginger-striped cat, asleep in the lap of a drunk on 14th, who had scribbled on cardboard, "Toby and me are homeless, please help." I put $10 in his paper cup. On the ferry across the Hudson, we tore the past off our skins and threw the pieces into the river. That night in my kitchen, windows wide open, fragrance of hyacinths filling the room. Adam and I laughed, danced to a salsa beat, while Toby stretched out on a blue velvet cushion and scrupulously licked his fur clean. And then two from My Crooked House, my second CavanKerry book. The Power of the Novena. At almost every family gathering, we end up having one of those debates lapsed Catholics seem fond of. Tonight's topic, do novenas work? I confess, my petition for all A's was answered. Make Mousy love me was not. Annie jumps in with no because she was never given drawing lessons. A second no from Louise, whose birthday we're here to celebrate, who wore down the white plastic beads of her first communion rosary, praying for a bike never received. Joni doesn't take a side. But Johnny, who's been chewing off Tommy's ear with a funny riff about how he feigned stomach aches to dodge 9 nights in a row of endless recitations of Hail Mary, full of grace, led by Mom from her rocking chair, us on our knees, suddenly stands, drops the laughter from his voice, and sums things up. Look, those novenas did work. You and you and you and you and you and I survived. My Crooked House. John wants to put a metal frame around our house as a way of correcting its lean. He already put metal beams under the floor in the first floor kitchen in an attempt to reverse its sagging. He points out how the straight edge of the new built-in bookcase in the first floor living room calls attention to the ceiling slant. The space between wall and frame of the back door changes from 2 3/4 inches at the base to 4 1/4 inches at the top. The second floor has its own set of problems. Much carpentry had to be done to the kitchen window to square it on the wall, and objects that fall on the dining room floor roll from north to south. This morning, he, while sitting in the yard, noticed how the stairs are off center from the door. Yes, I say to him, all over there are signs of the leans, slants, settles, sags, and cracks underneath. But, I add, this house has survived a century. It does not need to be straightened out. So then I'm going to finish with 2 poems from my latest book, which is called A Visit to an Extinct City. It's the first in a series of 5 books that were triggered by my first visit to Ostia Antica, which is an extinct city very close to Rome. Part 4. Aeneas lands at the mouth of the Tiber. Settlement becomes colony. Jupiter, Juno, Minerva. The river changes its course. You keep Rome fed. All grain comes through you. Invaders take over, leave. Pirates sack, leave. Saracens, emperors, popes. Cartwheels carve ruts into basalt blocks. Salts rise from the ground, dissolve cement. Fortunes made and lost, loved ones found and lost. Medea, Ovid's only play, disappears without a trace, but his poems are handed down in many tongues. Layers of dirt turn into layers of time. St. Augustine writes that his mother and he panted with the mouth of our heart. Buildings fall and no one picks them up. The book once loved no longer opened. The streets fill with rubble. Tomorrow will not be like today. Order slips into order of a different kind. Marble gravestones, inscriptions intact, reused as drainage lids. Absence takes over from presence. Ionaria, described as a frivolous girl in graffiti, withers to a name derived from first month of the Roman calendar. The river dries up, the empire falls, the Cardo becomes overgrown. Intrusive roots crack tufa blocks. Growth turns into decay, turns into growth, back and forth, blurs into a single line until decay wins out. No one remembers what sacrifice to make to the gods to change unfavorable winds. No one's left to sweep the sand. The upper floor of the insula becomes the ground. You stick to time-honored ways, but have a mind of your own. The imprint of roads that existed before the Roman grid becomes hard to find. Animals burrow, birds nest. The connection between carved symbols, branch, stick, and bracelet, no longer clear. Tourists pick up loose tesserae as souvenirs. You're seen from a window. Myths replace history. Part 10. O Ostia of uneven surfaces, where Romans walked, we walk, others will walk. See, sun, the soul and desire linger in your temples. What votive offerings may new ghosts bring to old? Fresco fragments, which never again will be a whole, cling to your walls. The day's work of its artist decayed. He lived, his name lived, his memory lived for years, but not beyond. Ostia of erasure, letters on a torso sink into stone. What words did they make? What sentences? Who was meant to read them? Were they meant to be funny, angry, sad, profound? Tell us, we'll understand. Landscape of incomplete, of unswept, of cut open, of gone. Oh, Ostia, how can you bring us back to before when there's so much after? Thank you.
Wow, that was wonderful. What a poem to end on. Thank you so much, Teresa. So there's been things in the comments first from Leslie Butterfield. Teresa, we're proud of you and your work. So shout outs from Leslie Butterfield. Also other things like the book once loved, no longer opened, panted with mouth of heart. The book once loved no longer opens again. Absence takes over from presence. Intrusive roots crack tufa blocks. There's just so many great lines that people are pulling up. So when you get a chance, do look in the comment box. You're receiving some love over there. Teresa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For
Thank
your
you.
work. It's always great to hear you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
There are
Again,
a few
folks,
questions.
Teresa's. Yeah, and there are a few questions as well. So we'll definitely get to those after Cap. Perfect. And as mentioned, Teresa's 2 books are available for a 20% discount from CavanKerry because of the event. So please secure those copies. Um, so now, without further ado, Kat Doty. Let's celebrate Kat Doty and her wonderful work. Catherine Doty is a poet, cartoonist, and educator from Paterson, New Jersey. She is the author of Momentum, a volume of poems, and Just Kidding, a collection of cartoons, Avocet Press 1999. Doty has received prizes and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, and the Academy of American Poets. An MFA graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, she has taught for the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Frost Place, the New York Public Library, and many schools. Her poems have appeared widely in journals and anthologies, so many that she didn't even list them. So without further ado, here is Kat Doty.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's such a pleasure to read with Teresa. And before I start, I want to thank the beneficent and visionary Joan Cusack Handler, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of CavanKerry Books, for all she's done for poets and poetry. And I'd like to thank Gabe, and I want to thank Dimitri, whose kindness I will never repay, although each has more than once hinted that his house needs painting. And I'm going to read 7 poems from Wonderama, and then one from my little lavender book, my first one with CavanKerry. Condemned. This is in three sections. Condemned. Franny and I leave school with Donna Nank, who's heard about Franny's house and wants to see it, and maybe step inside if she has the nerve. But because it's Friday, and Friday means Kraft macaroni, Franny runs the steep last block alone. Debbie freezes when we reach Franny's slumping porch, the house with its caving roof and glassless windows. She confides in me that if that's where she had to live, she'd race to the footbridge and hurl herself into the falls. Then she asks me, where do I live? Which is downstairs from Franny. 2. Before waddling off to snooze in the dark all day, our mother's possum peeks out from his hole in the wall, one seeded each evening with berries and cold spaghetti, and night crawlers pried from the ground with a carving fork. In volume O of A Neighbor's Funkin' Wagnalls, in dawn's primal light with coffee and some despair, she learns that the only marsupial in our country, not to mention the first one to ever live in her kitchen, belongs to the least evolved of all the species. Like her, for millions of years, he hasn't changed. But for now, she takes solace in her possum's opposable thumbs, the phalanx of fangs he bears in a pink-tongued yawn. Soon her children will waken and plague her with their needs. 3. While Peggy draws John Lennon on the wall, I print in magic marker on the ceiling a poem I love about poppies and the dead. Mary cracks black walnuts with a rock and feeds the pieces to our sister Judy, who pries the rusted lid from a can of house paint so she and Tommy can camouflage their beds. In the kitchen, our happy mother plays Nelson Eddy, so loud that it drowns out the screams of the couple upstairs. She is the reason, she tells us, why we are so smart, and smarts you can't buy, or we'd sell ours and get a TV. This is The Dawn of Beauty. He spins his scissors like a cowboy twirls a pistol and chops off my braids, 2 snakes he rescues me from. They lie on the kitchen floor among the crayons, near a drawing I made of the famous Patterson Falls. Downtown at St. Ag's Bingo, my mom yells, "God damn it," as do all the women who do not win this round. I rub my head where the two circles of bare scalp tingle and stare up at my father's blurry mouth, which is saying, I hate all women with long hair. All princesses, all witches, Aunt Pauline. These are the kind that I no longer am, the kind he cares enough to make me not. Then the shouting starts, and I know my mother's home. He hollers, who even looks at some little shit's hair, and make sure everybody knows she cut it herself. In the morning, my mother gussies me up in a dress. Incongruous as a chimp in my yellow ruffles, I follow her to the barber to fix what's left. Never, he says, let a 4-year-old near the scissors. Then laughs when I blame my dad, then shaves my head. Standing, 1964. See her clothes as they drop in the yellow weeds. T-shirt and shorts in the upraised arms of the yarrow. Her arms are lifted too. She exults or prays. She is narrow and flat. Her skin is white as surrender. The thatchy back of her head is a patch of knots. Her teeth are rotted, but then so are theirs, bared as the boys reach to touch her, not unkindly. They are 16, and she is half their age. Above them, a star goes dark, or many darken. A sky-cleaving jet unfurls 4 slender trails. She feels like the pine cone seed that split the boulder, the bullet exploding the head of the president. Once invisible, once inconsequential, now singular, at last in her rightful place. And there are a number of poems for Franny, who has just moved to Paterson and to whom I must introduce the pleasures of the city. So this is called New Girl in Town. Cross the street, Franny, if ever you spy Joe Moe, whose hand-hewn tar paper shack we approach on bets or pitch chunks of pudding stone at from moving cars. You'll want, too, to skirt Donna's uncles, drunk and jolly, who sneak through the screen door with snow cones and try to kiss you. And Ronnie V, who just got out of Rahway. We're not supposed to know what got him there. And St. Ag's School is an iron maiden of dangers, though statues of saints peer out of each dusky corner, and Jesus, his plaster self, tops the entrance stairs, where one day he stared at a second grader's vomit, hand held before his exposed and flaming heart, as if to express distaste for incarnation. Expect more shame to be handed out than blessings, administered lavishly, both in word and deed. For girls, 18 inches of steel on open palms. For boys, once slung across a nun's black lap, lusty wax on the seats of their regulation pants. So that's about it, Fran, except for that candy store where the old guy gives out wax lips for Halloween and ends of cold cuts to the dogs he leaves inside. He'll say, "Sweetheart, you look pale. Are you on the rag?" If you're hungry, Franny, tell him yes. He'll put his hand on your stomach and then on your forehead, then tell you you're clammy, then toast you a piece of toast. This is Franny of the Jungle. When the Grant Street Library stupidly loans her books, great numbers of which she pulls in a radio flyer, she attracts at once a mob of wagonless felons who kick the crap out of her shins and take it all, including the book she's renewed for 7 months about a lost girl who's learned to live in the jungle, whose pillow is a sleeping tiger's haunch, who eats without flinching termites twisting in honey, who hurtles screaming through the world on a matrix of vines, who never plods 3 miles home, bookless, hair webbed with spit. This is Working Girls. Working Girls for Althea, Gladys, and Four-Way Annie. Like them, she excels at her game and is fairly fearless. Like them, she endures the tedious for cash. So at 7 p.m., when most sitters head to the suburbs, she appears with a sleeve of Fig Newtons and Charlotte's Web at the sprung and screenless door of town's busiest hookers, who glance at her once, then pounce into the night. How to describe the extent of the house's squalor? Sink tectonic and dicey with towering dishes, corners piled with bottles, clothes, and shoes, and a smell, egg rotten, easily traced to its source. A girl, the victim of a recent Tonette home perm, whose blistered scalp is marshaled with rows of curlers. And babies, too, one clobbering the other, who rocks on his hands and knees in a pizza box. But for a few more flies, she could be home. When the women return at 2, she expects them to jingle. At least the one she's heard does things for quarters. But Annie's the one who pays her in rolled up dollars, who waves at her from the window like someone's mom. There's nothing really worth telling those other sitters who work tonight for good people and fancy houses, then scattered before the dads tried to drive them home. Slurp. This is JC and me. JC and me in the summer of '64. Catholicism and puberty duked it out the summer my body broke out of its corral and galloped Patterson's streets in search of sugar through the new and luscious grasses of impure thought. The priest I confessed to dismissed me as overly scrupulous. I was thinking too much about thinking of dirty things, and distracted because the word scrupulous started with screw, I left with a head full of sin and 2 holy cards, which he passed me as if they were discards in holy strip poker, a game I imagined both entertained and instructed. The first was Saint Agatha, Sicily's virgin martyr, her eyes rolled up to God, as often mine were. She would not renounce him despite the terrible tortures he could, being God, have simply plucked her from. If it were me, I'd have just said, Jesus who? Then cantered right out of there with my virgin self and ducked behind the bleachers at Hinchliffe Stadium. The second holy card was Jesus himself, bathed in a golden light and softly smiling, halo tipped back and eyes beaming mercy and mirth. I hadn't noticed till then how handsome he was. Eyes like blue poppies, a nose I regarded with envy, wavy auburn hair with a center part. I pictured the halls of St. Joe's full of boys in caftans, and me with my black hair tossing in the hot pink short shorts that got me suspended from school. Imagine, I thought, when he too was confused and changing, not quite a man yet, and almost, but not quite, God. Hear me calling his name, though he's already heading towards me, the August wind blowing his robe between his legs, the power to miracle lighting his holy face, a gingery fuzz on his lip, and an eager smile telling me I have powers too. At my nearness, his thoughts will cleave the Patterson Falls, send beer cans and tires jouncing down McBride, and cause the all-the-way hot dogs at Libby's lunch to vault like angels from their very secret sauce. My little lavender one. Okay. This is another Catholic poem. May, many of you probably know, is the Virgin Mary's month, and that's when we salute her. And in my case, as a child, we had to take home, in alphabetical order, we took home a statue with rosary beads in the bottom. And this is called, For May is the Month of Our Mother. When jump ropes smacked the softening tar, we took turns taking Mary home. She was white with a blue screw-off bottom, supplicant hands, and a rosary rattled inside as she swung in our book bags. After supper is good for some, Sister Michael said. Or before bed, if you pray the rosary, communism will fall. When my turn alphabetically came for Mary, I rattled her the 2 blocks up the hill, but Catholic in our family was for kids, and communism was a word, not a stick or stone. My mother was tired. My father was going to hell. I wasn't up to 50 Hail Marys alone, but I couldn't just dump Mary there on my cluttered dresser like a glowing white wimpled bottle of shampoo while I climbed the catalpa tree or played pies with the others. So I set her down on our suitcase-shaped Victrola and put on Mom's Pericomo, Ave Maria. Mary stood on her snake with her begging arms out, glowing. The sky in the window grew orange. The breeze carried lilacs. Next, I played Nelson Eddy, Ave Maria. Her 1-inch face held too much sadness to bear. To cheer her up, I played Rum and Coca-Cola, the Andrews Sisters. And our souls were so open from all that Ave Maria that we threw ourselves into the rhythm and jumped on the bed. And I beat Mary like a maraca on my palm, her burden of black beads clacking thick and loud until one slap too many cracked her right in half, and her beads flung themselves to the floor where they lay like intestines. I learned then to use something right or leave it alone. No, I didn't. I learned 12-inch virgin polystyrene, luminous ivory, black beads and screw-off bottom ran $4.95 or 20 weeks of allowance. I learned too that Mary was real to crack like that, and I saved a splinter of her shattered gown. And I know she is patron saint of the spring-cracked mind and mother of all who aspire to glow in the dark. Thank you.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay, everyone, we can go home now. I'm just kidding. All right, it's perfect time for the Q&A. Kat, when you get a second, you were getting so many wonderful comments, both of you throughout this evening of different things that you've both said. I kind of wanted to start it. We do have a bunch of questions. I kind of wanted to corral us and start us off with one question. I'm just trying to, let me switch this view real quick, the gallery view. Okay, cool, so we can see everyone. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I actually wanted to start out with this one question because I noticed a common thread with the both of you, and you've had so much great imagery throughout your work, but it felt so narrative. and we were able to kind of be taken by the hand by the speaker throughout each poem, and it was paced in like a conversational prose, but it's sung like poetry. So my question is, especially coming off of the great media burst of folks like Amanda Gorman and people turning to poetry and such for the first time, how did you first come to poetry, and how did you negotiate whether your work was coming out as poetry or prose?
Teresa, was that it? We're gonna
Oh
throw
man, I
this
should have
back.
started lighter, like favorite color. I'm sorry.
Um, I, yeah, that's a long question.
You want me to
I,
shorten it?
I tell people that I came to poetry, and I didn't grow up in a household, or I grew up in Jersey City. Kat grew up in Patterson, six of one, half dozen of the other. We weren't encouraged to excel in much, or
Mhm.
particularly in poetry. I always tell people that my beginnings were, I used to listen to the soundtracks to a lot of Broadway musicals.
Wow.
And I think that that's where I got part of it. And why poetry, not prose? Yeah, I honestly can't answer that. Kat, can you answer that? It just is.
Yeah,
Mm.
kind of, because I came about it a different way. My mother would read, and she'd read to us, and often she just was reading. But if you crawled into her lap and you were fairly quiet, she'd read out loud. And what the poetry just felt different,
Mm.
the rhythms of, and I loved that. And I knew I wanted to do that before I could handle a pencil to do that. But I mean, I'm not sure I knew what it was, but it was, just, incantatory, and which is probably a word I didn't know then. It was just delicious. It was what I wanted.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because you both, there's a bit of that musicality or the performative that has come from that, right? And I guess when we're doing narratives or when we're speaking narratives, a part of that storytelling is performative, whether we're thinking of theatrics or whether we're thinking of reading out loud, right? So I think that's what kind of attracts us to poetry, just how sonically things sound and what we can do with certain things. So thank you for that. Dr. Christopher mentioned I was actually on Wonderama in the early 70s, as were two of my
Oh,
five brothers. So Jason was the snake charmer, I played a balloon game, and Jack had an aardvark. And this experience, which all means nothing to me because I was born in the 90s, but that's fine. I'll read it. And Jack had an aardvark, and this experience is still in my heart. How does that show influence your latest book, Kat?
Oh, there's a poem in it where there's a kid watching Wonderama, and she believes, as some of you may have, that the people in the TV can see her as well as she can see them.
Oh.
So she's in love with Sonny Fox, and she
oh,
just waits, and for when he'll look straight ahead at the screen, which of course is into her eyes. And then I kind of went from there. And damning things happen on that show, terrible things. He took jokes from kids, and every now and then a kid would come on with a joke he or she had heard the father or mother tell, and it was just outright filthy, and Sonny would fall for it every time. This poor little kid would be lisping out filth. Oh, it was a wonderful show. Who could forget that?
yeah.
So that's how.
Oh God, that's so great. That's so great. I'm going to YouTube this after later on tonight. And, I'm gonna email you, Kat, about what my experience was. I'm pretty sure I could find some on it. Teresa, this question is for you. What moved you to write about classical subjects in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I came to the classics somewhat late. I don't really believe that I started reading them until maybe I was in my 30s or 40s. And what happened was we went to Ostia Antica because we just didn't have time to go to Pompeii or Herculaneum. And the minute I stepped onto the landscape there, I just felt overwhelmed and just by the time we were, our plan was, oh, we'll be here for an hour. And we ended up spending the entire afternoon. And when I walked out of there, I knew that I would write about it. I knew that it would be 5 books. I almost knew what the titles were. I didn't know what the contents would be. I'm just very, very drawn to it. So.
Okay, and so I have a follow-up to that, because this other question kind of feeds into that, especially because the impetus of you thinking about the classics and you thinking about mythology was for some reason you just wanting to stay there and marvel at this location, this structure. So Gabe asked, how do you manage in your work to have such decay and devastation but still talk about it so beautifully? How could you bring the sublime in your work even?
Well, because it is sublime. It's about memory and about time and about the layers of time and about things that we think we know, but we can't know. And there's there's ruins, and if we go and we look at it if we really pay attention, we see that a lot of the things that we believe in are, will disappear. And so it does, the sublime is really what's left. That's a beautiful word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. What intrigues me is when I'm working with people and I'm trying to define what like a poetic eye is, right? Or the poet's eye. Seeing through that person's perspective and trying to think as a poet. Like we're constantly having different events happen to us and different situational occurrences that are all material. And as we can see from your writing and from your writing, Kat, we turn that material into poetry. And we kind of put it in interesting lenses as well. So Kat, I was actually having a private chat with Gabe, and I mentioned that you poeticize like you are a cartoonist. You can take situations that are very serious and make them satirical or a bit of a pastiche. So I kind of have the same question for you, Kat, as I do for Teresa. How can you take a situation that might be a bit more harrowing or something that you have to bear witness to and make comedy in some of that tragedy?
Oh, ooh, I don't know if I could describe how it's sort of, it just seems to be organically there. Like maybe because I'm writing and then I go, oh God, who wants to go there? So then, I temper it with something that also things are funny. I mean, the most tragic, awful things are so often. So because that's how it happens. And you don't want to just be whining all the time,
Right. And I guess we kind of if we're talking technical terms, like the speaker in our work, right? Like sometimes if we're trying to hide a certain event behind the speaker, repackage it in a certain way. I guess it's almost like our defense mechanism to turn something into beauty or turn something into comedy. I mean, I could see that. And I mean, Kat, you're just naturally funny though, so I could see how that happens regardless.
Oh, thank you. It's a kind of, you strive, I think, for a kind of alchemy. Like it feels good to have taken something harrowing, and then if you get a poem out of it, well, it's given you something. For all those years, it's taken something, and so I think that's one of the reasons I write about those things.
Yeah. Hindsight is totally 2020, right? And we really notice that through writing. We're really able to rewrite those same stories or kind of give a different interpretation or a different perspective after that time has passed. And that's something that I've seen from both readers tonight in the several collections. Yeah, that's really important. This is probably going to be my last question before I have to head out for a reading, but that's okay because our managing editor, Gabriel, will be commandeering the rest of the Q&A. So thank you everyone for listening. And Teresa and Kat, I have a great admiration for the work both of you do, and I appreciate being able to hear both of you. So Gabe, I left off at a question on time marked at 7:39. So I'll read that. You can pick up with everything after that. So this question is from Miranda Beeson. How many Fran poems and how did you sustain the arc of them? That's for Kat.
Oh, there are, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 of them. It's funny. She's just an inspiration to me. And I didn't plan. I'm not very good at this sort of thing. So I don't sort of pencil out or plan a narrative arc. I take what I can and say what I need to say. And then it falls together, I think, just because there's this big bossy voice coming out with all of it. And and it's nice to be behind poor Franny. I've got her like, puppet doing all the things some of the things that perhaps she didn't really do, maybe someone else did. So
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, and always like negotiating that truth and what we could how we could spin that truth, right? And kind of it's so cool to have that power as the writer to be able to throw different situations onto people, whether they are a figment of our imagination or reinvented character throughout our lifetime. So yeah, yay for autonomy, right? As writers, we get to just switch our different voices and kind of use these very eccentric characters, because each character we meet in life is very eccentric. We get to use those and use it as utility in order to tell a really nice narrative. Okay, so that's my time. I'll let Gabe take over. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Continue washing your hands, wearing your mask, and staying safe. And peace and blessings. Good night.
Thank you, Dimitri. And the next comment we have in from James Keene says, Kat and Teresa, congratulations for your impressive readings. And then James says, Kat, I have to wonder, was it Patterson or Catholicism that hurt you into poetry, or did they conspire to do it?
wow. Oh, that's like, which side of the brick whacked you first, perhaps? I mean, it just seemed like an adventure at the time. Not a happy one, perhaps, but terribly interesting. I'd say they're about equal. Patterson's a great place, and you can have a lot of fun there as a kid. So it was just this, wonderful jungle. Catholicism, a different kind of jungle, different kind of beasts in it.
Fair enough. More like Upton Sinclair jungle.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So great. Thank you for that answer. This next question is for both of you from Elena. The question is, what led you to choose the visuals and or elements in your poems? There were so many vivid concrete items that I thought were intriguing. So how do you pick those moments, how when you're encountering something and it eventually becomes a poem? How do you know, oh my gosh, I've stumbled into this is going to be part of a poem?
Yeah, I'll take this one first, Kat. You just finished. I tend to, first of all, I think your eye gets better. And it's not only your eye. There's this thing almost in my stomach that says, oh, that's something I need to, I need to take away from this. So I think your eye gets better over time. But I tend to, begin with way too many details. And then I start honing in and looking at which ones I think have the most levels to them almost. And then, I eventually just get rid of the rest. So, that's my process. Sense.
Start with the whole tree and whittle it down to
yeah, really overwrite, and then start, you start seeing, oh, this image has the potential to mean, to have, more levels to it than this image. So this is the one that I'll choose.
Yeah, and you find the one that says what all the other ones are trying to say, right? Yeah.
Yep. Trial and error. Yeah.
anything that you have for that to add, Kat?
Yeah, this is the business of propaganda. So I want to get in your head and move the furniture around.
Mm.
And so I'm going to just work at this thing, this like a made thing. It's kind of like a shoe, not to make it sound less than it is, but you have, there's certain needs, for it to be workable and usable. And I do think of them as these machines, these small machines. So you just choose what will work for this effect or that effect.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I love that line too. I want to get in your head and move the furniture around.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. And Joan Crow says, "You are so young and so funny, and you are melting the snow around my house and made me laugh down to my soles." That's just a wonderful sentiment. I think it fits perfectly. Diane Matias points out that comedy equals tragedy plus time. And I would add as well that I did my critical thesis on the effective use of humor in serious poetry. And so I'm always fascinated by that topic and how when someone can pull it off as effectively as you do, Kat, it really makes the poem that you're reading that much more real. Like, like you said, in reality, things are funny, even when they're awful. There's that potential for humor. And I just personally, I want to express how much I appreciate that you're able to capture such humor in otherwise potentially really dark moments. It just fleshes it out that much more. Let's see, scrolling down here, Dr. Christopher Parker says, "Teresa and Kat, Catholic is a local regional culture of the 1960s to 70s as much as a large faith system. How do you feel your poetry is influenced by the milieu as compared to the religion?"
So the milieu being the time period of the 60s and the 70s versus the religion?
Yeah, perhaps that and or the culture around the practice of the religion. Like there's the doctrine and then there's the doctrine in application, I suppose. So,
Right. Well, it's true. I mean, when Kat, Kat's poem about bringing the Virgin Mary home, I mean, there were all of these strange, they're so common too. I mean, when Kat's reading, I'm saying to myself, oh yeah, same thing. There was this, I don't know, maybe it was this kind of Hudson County, Jersey, like New Jersey version of Catholicism that, it was part of a time and a place. But for me, I think the Catholicism was a larger influence. That seemed to be the world that I moved in.
Do you think that's because it was such an established fact, more or less, among the people that you were, like it was something that was so accepted and it becomes more than just words in a book or
I think we were much more isolated into a Catholic community. So, I knew one Jewish girl and thought she was so exotic. We all went to Catholic school. It was a very it was isolated, although it was Jersey City, but you had this sense that I had the sense that everybody was Catholic.
Makes sense. You know what you see, right?
Right.
Anything else for that one, Kat?
No, I just remembered, the difference between us and them is, we were going to heaven, and they were going to fry.
That's right.
You know, that was about it. And I bought it, hook, line, and sinker. I, you know, just said, okay. And I was terrified the minute I realized that this is, you know, the army. You got to join, you got to walk through, you know, march through your life with all this, carrying all this and able to do such moral damage. And it was a lot of responsibility. I was glad to kind of let it go after a while.
Yeah.
Moral damage, yeah, and such a heavy burden if you acknowledge what is negatively capable as well. You know, there can be good things and then so many not so good things all wrapped up in one. It's hard to separate them.
Well, when your role models are the martyrs, you know you're in trouble, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Here's another question from Dr. Christopher Parker. Kat and Teresa, following off on the imagery question, do you feel any of your poems are ekphrastic poems based totally on images?
No.
No. So they're okay.
Nope, Chris, nope.
Nope.
So they're always something that you stumbled upon in your living, breathing life, then, or something that you have personally experienced rather than drawing off of someone else's, you know, artwork or something.
Yeah, I've never had, you know, the drive to respond to a piece of art with a poem, or, you know, or write. I just like, I let it in. It's more propaganda. I let it move my furniture. I love it and I relish it. And you know, I don't feel like it's my place somehow to comment on it, you know, that way.
That makes sense to me. And I find that, you know, if you're engaging with art on that level where you're, like you said, you're assimilating it into your own consciousness and it moves your furniture around, you know, it'll influence your work whether you're writing something about it or not. It becomes part of your own personal landscape, right?
Yeah.
And so it's less a direct ekphrastic where you're focusing, zeroing in on one work, but, you know, good art, whether it's writing or painting or music or games or anything, can just expand your world. And that's one of the things that I really value in the work that I've read from both of you, but all the work from CavanKerry writers tends to be excellent at really doing that, giving the reader something, a new world to step into and inhabit, and then their own world grows. And I thank you both for that ongoing gift of your writing and your words.
You know, Gabe, I also think, you know, when I have a tremendous narrative impulse. So even when I'm looking at the ruins of a city, I'm trying to piece together a narrative from it. I think that's, you know, I think Kat also has a narrative impulse. Like we want to, in a sense, tell stories or move people through something.
And it really shows, and your work does carry the reader on this journey. You know, it's like a train or something more. I guess it's got the motion of a train and the feel of, I don't know, something else.
A train wreck.
Oh, let's hope not. But yeah, see, I'm not as narrative. I can't think of those things off the top of my head, but I appreciate those that do. So anyway, we I believe we're set to wrap up around 8:15. I did see someone say that if there was just a couple of minutes left, she'd love to hear a couple more, and I quote, "wonderful poems" from either of you. So if either of you have an extra poem that you wanted to read that didn't get to, if you didn't get to it, by all means. Susanna Rich says to Kat, read your monkey poem.
Which is my monkey poem?
I don't know. Your guess is better than mine.
Oh, I feel, oh my Susanna, I'm so sure I can't remember. I'm failing you.
Lorraine says, each of you read one. Susanna Rich says, the pet monkey, mother's monkey, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That I don't think that made it into anything. I mean, I don't think I don't have it here,
Gotcha.
but I love her and I'm very grateful that she asked for it.
All right. Miranda Beeson says, another Fran poem, The Bossy Voice. And Lorraine says, each of you read one, and then we can wrap it up if that works for everybody, unless there's any lingering questions. And if you don't want to, I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to, but
No, you know,
I'm enjoying
I'm
all.
great. I love to read. I'm great with that.
These are always such a treat for me, and I know a treat for so many other folks who are able to join us. We had a maximum of 98 people tonight.
Wow.
You're getting a number of requests for the title poem of Momentum. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, that I've got. Momentum. Your friends won't try to talk you out of the barrel, or your brag to go first, which has nothing to do with bravery. And you're so hungry to earn their love, you forget to claim first your perhaps last look at this mountain. Crab apples hanging sour in the sun, abandoned Buick, a favorite place to play, dismantled and weathered and delicate as a voting booth. Instead, you dive straight away and head first into darkness, the steel drum that dusts you like a chicken part with rust. Looking out, there's nothing to see of your friends but their calves, which are scabby, and below them the filthy sneakers, shifting, every foot aching to kick you off this cliff. Their faces, you know, are blank with anticipation, the look you see when they watch TV eating popcorn. They're already talking about you as if you're gone, as if you boarded a bus and roared out of earshot when one foot flashes forward and launches you. You know, as you feel that first solid slam, you are lost. The barrel changes shape with each crash to earth, as you will later, assuming and losing lives. But this is so true now. Ankles flayed to the bone, cracked ribs and crushed mint, the brittle, pissy sumac. Right now, the pin oaks are popping in their sockets. The hillside wears your shoes, clouds, pleat and buck. You know, of course, that no one's going second, and friends who tell this story will use the word idiot, rolling their hands in the air. But you know what your life is for now. And rise up and just about scalp yourself on that tree limb above you. Another thing you couldn't possibly know was coming. Another which, like your first breath, was not your idea. Thank you for asking for it.
I love that final line. Christine says, I love you and I love hearing you read that poem over and over.
Oh.
I also added, you said delicate as a voting booth. I said, what are those?
Oh yeah, I'm getting timed out of a lot of my work.
Yeah, right.
Really, I'm glad, and you know, Dr. Parker remembered what Wonderama was.
Yeah, Danny Schott, I think, said that he was also on Wonderama in the 60s, if I recall. Earlier in the chat, it feels like it's been ages already. But so let's see. Oh man, so that's an absolute joy to hear, because I love that poem as well. So I love all of them. this is a treat. I've been looking forward to meeting you myself as part of CavanKerry. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a couple of years. So forgive me while I get excited
Not you.
about it. Flower says that poem doesn't fail to break my heart in the best ways. And Gia says, Kat, you've been moving my brain furniture around for years. I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
So,
Oh my gosh.
any requests for Teresa before we wrap up the show? Jonathan is saying read another from your new book if you have one that you'd like to spotlight for us.
I do.
Oh, perfect.
If you all want to listen, I can read it.
We do.
Hey, there's still 74 people here, so knock them out.
This is part 9.
All right.
Afternoon sun lets nothing hide. It shines on things as they are, as if time didn't exist around them, as if one moment were as good as the next. The past stands still beyond its reach. It cannot bring the dead back to life. It cannot undo what has been done or not done. How old looks up close. I didn't expect so much dust, so much not there-ness of years past. Little of the lives lived in this city last in its remains. Details, colors, and forms have returned to what they were before they were. Fragments of do not reveal the meaning of. The knowable has become quickly or slowly unknowable. Real importance reduced to words about importance. What has happened cannot predict what will. Nothing in this place not unaltered. Each layer built over past and under future. Shovels and screens can't excavate the heart. What's beneath will not be forced to show. This is not the world we walked in our expectations. Absence grows here. This is all there is. What I want to see is gone. What I want to see refuses to take no for an answer, refuses every emptiness. Even so, what I want doesn't matter.
I've allowed everyone to unmute, so a round of applause for both of our fantastic authors.
Teresa, yay, Kat.
Yay!
Such a
Bravo.
joy.
Reading.
Great.
Hey, Kat.
Thanks a lot.
Very good, Kat.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
guys.
Great back.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Hi, Kat. It was a great reading.
Teresa,
It
was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Oh, I like it.
Thank you. Success.
Hi, Angela.
Bye.
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 And one last time, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Kat. I hope you all have a wonderful night and take the words, let them move around your furniture and grow your world. So.
Love you, Kat.
Love you. I love you, Teresa.